Joined now by Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, one half of the Rink Wide duo with Andrew Watt, and they dropped a new podcast yesterday. And, of course, Jeff was enjoying some time off last week before the All-Star break. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing well. Back home, rested, refreshed, dodging raindrops that I didn't have to last week down in the desert, but had a good little getaway and ready to get back at it. 33 games to go for this hockey club, and I guess, we'll plot their course from here on out and see what they look like without Bo Horvat.
Before we drill down on all the Bo Horvat extension and the details of his contract and everything that has happened news-wise here, just your thoughts and impressions on the All-Star festivities and Bo and Elias sharing a nice moment.
Yeah, full disclosure, I watched a fair bit of the skills comp on Friday. I did not watch the game on Saturday or the games. My son had a soccer game, and really I had very little interest. I have seen the 3-on-3 thing. It doesn't really draw me in, but I wanted to see what they do with the skills competition. I think the NHL, they try, but I think they battle this idea of not fully knowing what they want that event to be, and I do think that they try to serve a couple of masters of producing an in-arena event for the live ticket-buying public in the city, the host city, and this year it was Sunrise, and then coupling that with a produced television event. And so then you've got the two off-site pre-taped, pre-recorded. And I thought the dunk tank thing was kind of fun. I think it could have been tidied up a little bit. I joked on Twitter I would have liked to have seen the commissioner or some others in the dunk tank. Raise the stakes, but have fun with it. Put the coaches, put media members, I don't know, put somebody else in the dunk tank, not necessarily the players. I thought the dunk tank won, though, for the most part, aside from pucks flying into the ocean. I hope no sea turtles were harmed in the production of the event. It was a little better than the golf one for me. But again, you're in Florida. I think that's important to try to link these. Last year, Vegas, they did stuff in the Bellagio fountains and out on the Strip. And next year in Toronto, I would imagine the CN Tower will probably feature prominently, or Rogers Center. So I liked a lot of that, but I get it kind of bogs down. And then ultimately, from the player's perspective, you got to look like you want to be there and try a little bit more. So I think if I had a suggestion box, if I had an entry I could put in a suggestion box for the NHL, it would be more events involving more players at the same time. Like the fastest skater, just make it down and back in 4 lanes so that you've got 4 guys going side by side by side by side rather than, the lap of the ice with the timing. I don't know. I just think, I like Kadri and McDavid when they were side by side with the puck shooting, the accuracy, and then Kadri got completely hosed on that because everybody was focused on McDavid, and Kadri ended up beating him. But I like that element of side by side, head to head, as opposed to everything just being run against the clock. So who knows? It's an event for the sponsors. I always hear that it's for the kids. And yet I saw nothing there that was really geared to the kids. Like Mitch Marner trying to have some fun with Miami Vice. Kids don't know what Miami Vice is. That's not something that's geared towards, the under 10 set. So again, I think they try to they try to meet the expectations of a whole bunch of masters, and I'm not sure that they really fulfill their obligations.
Do the kids know who Happy Gilmore is these days?
Again, I thought that one fell completely flat as well.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you're well rested. Canucks are well rested. Also the good news is that you are not a shadow of your former self like the Canucks are, because it's one thing for us to, during the All-Star break, sketch out what's left and who's on this team now. When you actually see it spelled out at practice, when you see them spelling it out to us, man, oh man, when people said that this team can't tank, I don't know, Jeff. That's not a good team. That's not a good team on paper right now.
No, and I was curious to see what they were going to do with Anthony Beauvillier, and it's not just a straight-up swap for Bo Horvat, but it looks like he's going to get Horvat's spot in the bumper on the power play, so that's curious to me, a guy that hasn't scored a power play goal all season. But if the Canucks run the sets that they have run, it would stand to reason that the puck will find him on the inside, and we'll see if he gets some looks there. Elias Paterson finally got that monkey off his back with the power play goal that creeped across the goal line against Columbus in the final game before the break, and then he goes down to Sunrise and posts the hardest shot in the league. So let's see if he can put that to good use over in that one-timer spot. But Beauvillier getting a great opportunity. I mean, he looked like at practice on Sunday, skating with Paterson and Kuzmenko. That is the top line for the Canucks. And then, of course, JT Miller has to slide to the middle to fill the spot. And I don't know that he will fill the spot left behind by Bo Horvat. But Dakota Joshua got a little bit of a bump under Rick Tocchet in those 3 games before the break. All of a sudden, he's a top 6 guy on this team. We'll see how long that one lasts. But the fallout there is that Brock Besser starts out of the All-Star break on the third line with Sheldon Dries and Vasily Podkolzin, who's back and doesn't have a goal to show for the 16 games that he played earlier this season. So, if we're trying to boost asset value and maybe make a late pitch to move off the contract to Brock Besser, that's a tough spot for him. And I thought maybe he would get a bump into the first unit power play, and that was a way that they could elevate him and maybe register a little bit extra productivity. And maybe it'll happen. But in this first game out of the break, the Canucks reconvened in Vancouver over the weekend, flew all day Sunday, and had a 5:30 p.m. local practice in New Jersey on Sunday night, and then no morning skate here ahead of the game. So Rick Tocchet was lamenting the fact, very little practice time, said he would like to have had 10 practices over the break. He's had exactly 2 now, one before the break and one after, and they've got 4 games in 6 and really 5.5 days, because the game at the end of this trip is a noon Eastern time, 9 Pacific in Detroit. So really it is 4 games in 5.5 nights. So Tocchet still wants this practice time. He's still trying to figure out. My guess is he doesn't know if Dakota Joshua's first name is Dakota or Joshua. But he's still learning his players here, and he's not going to get much of an opportunity in the way of practice time on this trip. So there's going to be a whole lot of learning on the fly for the new head coach. And I think we're likely to see more bodies coming and going, because I can't imagine that the Canucks are finished with their wheeling and dealing here.
The derby is with the Montreal Canadiens, who have crept below the Vancouver Canucks in the standings by points percentage at 431 to 439. As we have talked about, it's going to be very difficult to sink lower than the Sharks, Coyotes, Ducks at all, and probably St. Louis and Philadelphia, Ottawa has played better hockey. Might, I don't want to say out of reach, but you would think that those teams are going to stay ahead. But it's going to be with Montreal, I think, to see if you can comfortably finish 6th from the bottom in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. So a lot of Habs, going to be a lot of Habs fans here in BC between now and the end of the season. Horvat, the extension, 8 years, 8.5. He's got a full no trade, moving to a half the league no trade, no signing bonus. Your thoughts and impressions there. Were you at all surprised that Bo would this quickly re-sign with the team that, let's face it, has had some nice playoff runs, but isn't exactly, a winning cup-like team, and may have some, like the Vancouver Canucks, contracts that age poorly on that club?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised, because I thought maybe there would be a sign and trade, and obviously that didn't happen. And so who knows if there was a verbal commitment, whatever the case, All-Star weekend comes and goes, and I kind of figured that Bo would just want to get assimilated in his new surroundings, and before playing a game to put pen to paper. But look, that kind of money, 8.5 over 8 years, or for each of the next 8 years, I just didn't see that contract coming for Bo Horvat. This is a guy that had 39 points in that COVID-shortened All-Canadian Division team season not that long ago. 39 points. He's going to get to 39 goals. I don't know if he's going to get to 50. The Islanders only have 30 games, and I think that was part of the urgency on their part, was to get this done now, because they need to make up ground in the East, and every game matters. And so I think that's kind of been one of the things that maybe didn't get talked about a lot. There was some urgency on the Islanders. They've played more games than just about everybody, and so every game matters when you're going all in like that. So for them to get the deal done, look, I tweeted this a little bit yesterday, and I remember talking about it, I think, with you guys as well. When the Nuge re-upped in Edmonton, 8 years, 5.125. Now, Horvat's been making 5.5. He wasn't going to take a pay cut. But these guys are both, top 10 in their draft, basically the same age at signing here. Nugent Hopkins was the first overall pick, but both legacy guys, letters for their organizations. I thought that there was some sort of framework there. And for Bo Horvat to get $68 million total, where the Nugent deal comes in at 41, it doesn't quite double it, but it just blows it out of the water.
It does,
and it just talks about I still don't know how the Oilers convinced the Nuge to take the deal that he did, but man, we saw it with JT Miller negotiating off a career year, and Horvat's done the same thing here. Great work by Pat Morris, obviously, and the quote from Lou Lamoriello about too much money, too long contract. It's just you've just acquired this guy, and then you go and dump cold water on him. But that's Lou being Lou. I get all of that. So never going to begrudge a player what he can get. And some people said, well, why wouldn't he wait till the summer and shop his services? I think you saw the Johnny Hockey example last year, maybe even Nazem Kadri a little bit. There's no guarantee that there was going to be $8.5 million on the table from anybody come summertime. And so for Horvat, he seems like a guy that wants to be comfortable in his surroundings. It's going to be a change, obviously, moving from Vancouver to who knows where they'll set up in the metropolitan area, but on Long Island somewhere. I mean, there's going to be a culture shift there, but with a young family, I just didn't get the sense that Bo wanted to move for a short time and then go through it all again in the summer. And it was there. It was on the table for him, and it required a pen stroke, and he jumped at it. So set up beyond his wildest dreams. Guys, he's made now, with 3 contracts, he's made over $100 million, or at least he's committed to more than $100 million as a National Hockey Leaguer. Good gig if you can get it.
What do you think this says about the trade market going forward towards the deadline? Because, I'm sorry, the NHL can't have it both ways and cry poor with the salary cap and all its flat cap, so we can't make trades, and then hand out contracts like that, and even put in the JT Miller contract for that matter. And yeah, that's forward thinking. That's not in the now, but it's all money for next year. So, a lot of the trades for guys with term going forward, I'm sorry, you guys are still spending money out there. You guys are obviously assuming that the salary cap is going up. I hope this leads to trades here, because you're still spending a lot of money in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, and look, I'm not sure that I expected the Islanders to be the team that went all in. I know that there was talks at the draft and JT Miller, and then that kind of went away. But, they have struggled mightily here to put pucks in the net. And remember, too, that they've got a new building. It's not as shiny and new as it was a couple of seasons ago. But, I think there's some long-term thinking here on their part that, yes, they've got this aging group, but Horvat fits into, with Matt Barzal, Noah Dobson, Romanoff, and Sorokin. I mean, that's sort of their core, and they've got 5 pieces there that are all, under 30 certainly, and Horvat's a couple of years away from 30, and he's the oldest of the bunch there. And then, they've got that veteran crew. So I think they're adding Bo Horvat here, hoping that, first of all, they can climb above the playoff bar this year, but maybe put together something that could be a legitimate, I don't know if they can contend necessarily, but be a team that pushes over the next couple of seasons. As for the rest of the trade market, yeah, I mean, now teams know, okay, the Islanders are in business. Do the teams around them feel that they have to react to try to, stake their claim in this playoff race? That's always what I think when a team jumps a little bit ahead of everybody else is there going to be reactionary deals? Now, we saw Seattle pick up Jacob Magna last night from San Jose. That's a minor trade, but that's San Jose. We were talking about teams that are, starting to peel off pieces. How about Arizona returning Dylan Guenther to the Seattle Thunderbirds and just stacking that team for a run to the Memorial Cup this spring? But it's also Arizona saying, hey, there's a guy that was helping us score some goals. We don't want him around these parts because he might help us win some hockey games. So, I think you can see it at both ends, top and bottom. But look, we've all been at this for so long. Nothing gets people talking like trades. I do hope that this lubricates the trade market, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks, I think there's a team now to watch for sure with all of the pieces that they have at varying price points. And what are they going to do? Because I do think that the Hawks, and we saw them just ahead of the break, and they were terrible then. But I do expect that they'll strip it down if they can, and those are going to be tough deals. Obviously, they're going to have to retain on guys like Kane and Taves. I mean, those are tough contracts for other teams to take on, but get creative, make some things happen. And so, inside a month now from the trade deadline, and I would imagine that this deal between the Canucks and the Islanders at least starts to lubricate the machine a little bit.
Let me ask the Bodog poll question then. The Miller contract or the Horvat contract, which one do you think will age better?
It's tough to know because Horvat is going into a system now where they just don't score many goals, and they brought him in there to help. But it's not like their power play. The Islanders' power play at 7% since Christmas. Like, yes, he can help them, but he's not a miracle worker, and somebody's got to get the puck to him for him to be productive there. So that's why I said, like, these seasons don't come along every year, and he had a legitimate shot at 50 goals. I think that's going to be tough now for him, 31 at the time of the trade, with 30 games remaining on a team that just hasn't made any sort of dent in the back of the net in a long, long time here. So, he's been brought into, it's a massive overpayment. And I like Bo Horvat, the person, so much. And as I said, don't begrudge a guy when he can get the contract, but there's going to be regression. He's not a 45 to 50 goal scorer in the National Hockey League now. Like, that just didn't happen overnight. He had a nice run last year. He has worked on his shot. He's worked on his hand-eye and the deflections. Like, all of that can contribute to him scoring at a higher rate than he has in the past. But I just think going into the Island where they preach defense, and it's going to be a culture shock for him. And some of it is good. Like, he's played on this Vancouver team that's given up so much. I think Bo's going to enjoy the fact that, they're not giving up 5 and 6 on every single night out, but it's, can they score enough to win, especially down the stretch as games tighten up. And, the Islanders, I think their blueprint to the playoffs is to play playoff hockey over these final 30 games. So I think it's going to be tough for him to come anywhere close to living up to the billing. But in the same breath, JT probably won't ever get back to anywhere close to 99 points. And so it's a year shorter, but JT's a little bit older. I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not taking the cop out here. I just don't know, but it is going to be a fascinating study, and obviously it's going to be a talking point for a lot of years in this market.
The Islanders have Oliver Wahlstrom coming up in the forward ranks here, and he's growing. We'll see he's only 22. But in their last 4 drafts, they've got 41 NHL games played out of their last 4 drafts. Like, there's not a next wave coming for the Islanders right now for Bo Horvat to get some scintillating support. It's a little bleak in that regard too.
Well, if you look at Cap Friendly, the commitments are incredible. Like, they've got almost no money coming off the books. Varlamov as a backup, and a really solid goaltender, but they probably move off him to free up a little bit of money. But otherwise, just about every single guy has term, and a lot of them have significant term. And that's why sort of what you see is what they're going to be, I think, for the next couple of years. And that's where they're banking on Horvat coming in there and boosting their goal production. Right now it looks like he's going to slot in on a line with Matt Barzal and Josh Bailey. So a pretty good landing spot. But again, if the Islanders think that Bo Horvat is a legitimate number 1 playmaking, puck distributing center, they're going to find out in a hurry that that's not the player that he is. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of chemistry can he form with a guy like Matt Barzal, because Barzal needs the puck and wants the puck and can do great things with it as well. So, it starts here on this Monday for Horvat. He's in Philadelphia. In fact, that game, I think, starts half an hour before the Canucks and the Devils. So, there'll be those parallel universes. People will be keeping one eye on Horvat and his Islanders debut while watching the Canucks and the Hughes brothers do their thing at the Rock.
Ray, I think it's going to be a nice mix with Barzal, actually. I could see those two working very, very well on the island. So many topics. Some are going to spill over to tomorrow, Jeff, but just let me ask you about Rick Tocchet's comments that Elias Paterson, Quinn Hughes are going to wear A's the rest of the year. And, of course, Tyler Myers has been stripped of his A for at least the remainder of the season. How do you see all this playing out, and do you think it's the right call?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. I mean, Myers was the standby. He had not worn an A this year, but he had been in the past the guy that would step in, next man up when somebody went down. But we saw Elias Pettersson in the game in Tampa when OEL was a healthy scratch. And so I think, that was even before Tocchet's arrival, but notice had been served that there was a change coming in that leadership group. I like it. I'm curious to see, because OEL and Miller still wear A's, so you can only have 3 on a given night. So how do they do this? Is it a 4-man rotation with only 3, or is it a home and away split? So I think there's still some things to be determined here, but certainly an acknowledgement from Rick Tocchet that he needs these guys now to take that next step. And I think they're both ready for it. And Elias Pettersson, he's going to be 25 in November. Like, no longer young Elias Pettersson. Time marches on. They grow up in front of our eyes, and Quinn Hughes is just a year behind him. So they're already looked at as leaders on the ice in the points column for this hockey club, the way that they run the power play, all those types of things, and now they've got to find their voice. But the one thing I think about NHL locker rooms is the players know who the real ones are. And I think the players in that locker room recognize the roles that Paterson and Hughes occupy. And if this team is going to get where it needs to go, and we all know there's a ton of work remaining to be done in that regard, but those are two guys that obviously are going to have to be at the front of the pack, leading the way. So I think it's the right call. I was of mixed minds a little bit last week when the Horvat deal went down, and you thought, okay, what are they going to do about captaincy? There was a part of me that thought, if you wanted to make a bold statement, you put the C on Paterson right now and send a message to JT Miller that, this is the lead dog and you've got a role in here, but, here's your captain now. But at the same time, Rick Tocchet's 3 games into this as head coach. He needs to understand that locker room dynamic for himself. And, it's going to be tough sledding. There isn't a whole lot to play for. And so I think you're going to see guys that are willing to step up and go through the wall for the hockey club, and others that maybe kind of, fade away down the stretch here and just kind of go through the motions. And so I think these 33 games, the real value for Tocchet is behind the bench, the practice days, really getting a feel for the true inner dynamics, and then take the offseason to make the decision about, who's here, first of all, and from the assembled cast next season, then you can really drill down on a new leadership group.
The last one for me, you started mentioning this. You made an allusion to this right off the top. A Besser showcase, perhaps Garland elevated. This is the final exam for these two guys, isn't it? I mean, if they can't make something of this right now with an elevated role, they're both untradeable and unusable, perhaps, for the Vancouver Canucks going forward. I'm sure the Canucks are as nervous as anybody about what these two guys in particular are going to do over the next 3 weeks, because they want to show themselves as an asset to the organization in one way or the other.
Yeah, and it's been a tough go for Brock Besser, certainly on the goal-scoring front. And to see him come out of the break playing with all due respect to Sheldon Dries, who's trying to carve out an NHL career, but that seems like a tough go. And especially with Vasily Podkolzin on the other side, I hope Podkolzin comes firing out of a cannon, trying to make up for the missed time that he spent down in minors. But it's been a disappointing start to the season when there was so much hope coming off the tail end of last year with Vasily Podkolzin. And let's see what he looks like here. But that's a mishmash of a line to me. And so I'm not quite sure what I expect from Brock Besser, but 9 goals at the All-Star break. Certainly had higher hopes. I know he did at the outset of camp, the line about 30 goals. I don't know where it goes from here. And Connor Garland, continues to stay in the top 6 with this group, but there hasn't been a whole lot of production for him either. And now, he's played under Tocchet, so there's a feel there with the new head coach, Garland and Bruce Boudreau, for whatever reason, that just didn't seem to ever bring out the best in Connor Garland. So maybe Tocchet can get to Garland in a way that Bruce didn't. And we'll see where it goes. And then, they also, over the weekend, it wasn't just Podkolzin, but Nils Aman is back. And Phil DiGiuseppe looks like he's going to get plugged right in as well. So 3 guys come up from Abbotsford, get right into this NHL lineup where you talked about, there isn't a whole lot there. And you're right. And those last 15 games before he got sent down just after Christmas, Nils Aman had completely disappeared. So I'm curious to see what his time in the American Hockey League does for him and his confidence, and if it was a bit of a wake-up call. He's still a young player, and young guys hit the wall and all of that. But they need help down the middle. There's no doubt about that. And they also, without Mikheyev now and Horvat, obviously open auditions for penalty killing. Neither Besser nor Garland get utilized in those roles. So, they're 5-on-5 guys and maybe some power play opportunities. But as we move down the road here, 33 games, certainly face-offs will be interesting just because Horvat took such a majority of face-offs and was so good. The power play, every power play starts with a face-off. Canucks generally, I think Horvat was close to 70% on power play face-offs. So it's probably JT Miller, but they won't win at the same rate that they did with Horvat. But then the penalty killing, and the penalty killing's been dreadful. So in some ways, maybe there's a blessing in disguise, some new fresh blood and some new ideas. But whatever the case, it's something they've got to tackle because it's just been an embarrassment all season with a penalty kill at 65%.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Like I said, plenty on my list here to spill over into tomorrow. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll be listening to Rink Wide, and we'll catch up then.
All right, guys. Thanks.